Hi, welcome everyone to this Education Lab Google Hangout. Thanks everyone for joining us, including our two guests, Brendan Jeffries and Michael Fitzgerald from Gildo Rey Elementary. This is the third Google Hangout for the Seattle Times Education Lab project, which started last fall and is focused on examining promising practices in education. This Hangout will cover a story which appeared in the paper Monday about Gildo Rey Elementary in Auburn, which is one of the top scoring schools in the state, especially in math, even though it's also a high percentage of its students come from low-income families. And the story explores how the school has, over a 10-year period, succeeded in getting nearly all its students to pass both the state math and reading exams. And again, welcome to everyone who's watching, and also to our guests, Brendan Jeffries, who taught at Gildo Rey for 7 years. Is that correct? 6 or 7 years?
9.
9 years.
Yep.
And now works in the Auburn School District Central Office, focusing on math instruction district-wide. And also Michael Fitzgerald, who is a third-year teacher at Gildo Rey, and is teaching in 5th grade this year. And last year, all 100% of his 4th graders passed the state math test.
Yep. Very exciting, very exciting.
So readers have submitted a number of questions in advance, so we'll start with those. If anyone listening has a question that they'd like to add to the list, please look for the question button. And I'm not quite sure where that is on the screen, but I hear it's there, so if you can find it, please submit your questions there. So here's the first one. This is from a reader who says, it sounds like you don't have a specific math textbook, but draw from a variety of sources. What are those sources? And the follow-on question is, if you had to choose one curriculum, what would it be and why? Maybe we'll start with Brendan with that one, and Michael, if you'd want to add to that, you can do that after Brendan finishes.
Okay, as far as obviously we don't use a curriculum, but as far as sources to garner problems aligned to the standards, we used, like was described in the article, the balanced math system, where we have a certain apportionment of our math time is focused on fact practice. A certain amount of time is focused on review, and then a certain amount of time is focused on whole group instruction. And for the review and the whole group instruction, typically we will go in and pull problems from resources like Khan Academy and IXL. Those are probably our two most frequently used resources. But we also have Common Planning every day. And so, and that's the time, typically we spend about 15 to 20 minutes of that time period planning out what we were going to teach for math and how we were going to teach it and so on, and pulling the problems associated with that. So sometimes we would create our own problems. Primarily when dealing with problem solving, that's kind of the direction that we went. Any type of skills-based things, a lot of times we'd pull from IXL and Khan Academy.
Yeah, and I would add that I know the question was if you could pick a curriculum. I wouldn't. I like to derive a lot of my instruction from the direct standard rather than have someone try and digest it for me. I want to look at it myself and determine what's best for my kids and the direction I need to get them to that end of that standard. And so I agree with everything that Brendan's saying, and I think a lot of our curriculum is dependent on the standard itself for whatever subject area we're working with.
I just add to that the unfortunate side of education right now is that there really isn't a math curriculum in existence that is, at least that I've had the opportunity to look at, that I would consider to be deeply aligned, not just to the Common Core state standards, but also what the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium is publishing in relation to the standards, because you really have to understand both entities or both documents to really get at the meat of what your kids need to know and be able to do. So, and there just is no curriculum that I've seen at this point in time that merges those two sources together in a way that really gets kids to mastery with their grade level standards. And that's the key component. We have to move them from point A to mastery of their grade level standard every year that they're in our classroom. And that's our goal. And without resources like Khan Academy and iExcel that are pretty well aligned to the standard, and then our understanding of those standards to vet those problems thoroughly, I think we'd be stuck in the mud. So it's important to understand all of your standards documents and to get a full scope of what your kids need to know and be able to do in the classroom. So, and there just isn't anything out there that does that yet.
Well, I think you've already answered the second question, was whether you use any online math resources such as Khan Academy and iExcel. So clearly you do.
I'm a big fan of Khan Academy. They just partnered with the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, which I think is great, and a lot of the problems that they're starting to publish not just are mirroring what the Smarter Balanced Assessment is going to look like, not just in format, but also in rigor as well, which is really, really important. And that's one reason why Michael and I, a lot of the time, would have to sit down and develop our own problem-solving activities, is because what is out there does not match or match well with the rigor that are of the problem-solving that our kids need to and are expected to do, both on the current MSP and on Common Core. So we end up creating it a lot. As more and more of these companies start to look at what is that difficulty level that students need to achieve and match their problem types to that, online resources are great because I can go right to the standard that I'm teaching that day, identify problems that align to it, and then use those problems to drive or create my lesson. So,
and to further that, I know that like the highest level on Bloom's taxonomy is the creation element, and by doing it the way that Brendan and I have done, where we're looking at the individual questions, creating them on our own, and then creating ones that we need, it's allowing us to develop the subject matter knowledge that we need in order to be efficient with the standards themselves. I mean, we're creating the questions that we deem necessary, and it's only furthering our understanding of the concepts, making us thus better teachers of whatever it is we're looking at.
Yeah, so I should remind viewers. Sorry. I just read to remind viewers that these two did work closely together when Brendan was at Gildo Rey. So Brendan, you were sort of Michael's mentor, right, through his first couple of years of teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when they talk about working together, that's when they were working together. So another reader had a question about how you help advanced learners. The story didn't go into that in depth except to mention that, advanced learners have different kinds of opportunities at your school. So how do you help them, the students who have already mastered the regular math or the ones who are ready for acceleration, especially those who maybe are on a track to take algebra in middle school? And who would like to start with that one? Michael?
Sure, yeah. With the way that we outline our system, a lot of our kids are gaining the level of rigor that they need through the individual groups that they go to. So the highest level of learner that we have is meeting that, or is getting that highest level of rigor that we can muster in our realm. And the teachers themselves are pushing the kids with the creation of the questions that we come up with. And I do a couple little things along the side, some challenge group stuff where I look at the kids that I feel can do a lot of independence or work independently and just kind of challenge them where they're at. I think one of the best strengths that we have at our school is seeing where kids are and trying to push them even further, even if they're already at the standard, even if they're already meeting it. So those are just a couple of things that we're doing, to meet those kids' needs, because we don't just teach to the low. We teach to everyone. So.
Brendan, do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I would just want to comment on Michael's last little sentence there, and that we don't just teach the low, we meet kids where they're at and move them forward. And I think that's exemplified by the number of level 4s that we got last year on the MSP, particularly in 4th grade, in both math and reading. And then Michael also alluded to the challenge group, and a lot of that challenge group is project-based learning. So for those kids that can move forward at that rapid pace, and need that kind of extra push forward, we certainly had a system both in that challenge group and in our walk to math, which I know is discussed in the article, and that Michael alluded to as groups, where we have kids grouped by ability, and thus in turn allowing us to push those high cap kids further and further along in the standards. And we have pretty good statistical data on a great number of our kids, meeting that algebra standard both in 8th grade and then passing in 9th grade as well. Excuse me.
Yeah. Do you remember those statistics off the top of your head?
Sorry, I've been fighting a cold. I had those pulled up on my computer just before my computer shut down on me.
Ah, all right.
But I'll
if you get them back up, we'll come back to them later.
Okay. I'll dig around for them.
Again, just to remind anyone who's watching live, there is a button that I now have been told is a yellow button that says "Be part of the conversation," and that's where you can submit additional questions at the bottom left of the screen. Okay. Here's another nuts and bolts question. How much homework do students have each night? How do you support parents who are trying to work with their children when there is no book to refer to? Brendan, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I'd love to.
He loves that question.
What's that?
I said he loves that question.
I do love that question. I have a good answer for it. My vision for student homework has always been that our kids should be able to go home and teach their parents. So it shouldn't be a matter of the parent having to teach the child. It should be a matter of the child being able to teach the parent. This is what I did today. This is how I did it. This is how I derived my answer, and so on and so forth. And I would love to see our kids having those conversations at home. So what we did is we based most of our homework off the review portion of our 60-minute instructional core. And so we would take a piece of notebook paper and fold it into 8 equal parts. The top 2 parts would be for name and date, and then the remaining 6 parts would be for 6 questions. 4 to 5 would be based on the review that we did, so things that kids had a good level of familiarity with, and then 1 or 2 of the problems based on how much time we'd spent with the new concept would be based on the new concept. And most of the stuff that we sent home was, I don't know, skills and or conceptually based, because the kids would actually hand write out the homework, so we didn't want them writing out, paragraph long word problems. But again, the philosophy around it is our kids should be able to go home and teach their parents this stuff. And then as far as parent communication or questions, I know that we were just there and available. So if parents had questions about how to do homework or tackle it, we were there and available to answer those. Although we didn't get a ton of those, and I think it's because it was supportive of what the kids knew. They could bring it home and they knew how to do it.
Yeah, I always tell my parents at the open house that if your kid is having some trouble with the homework, it could be of 2 reasons. One, they probably didn't learn it well enough in the class, in which case, you intervene as much as you feel comfortable, and then 2, it also is an indicator of their engagement and their attention in the classroom, and they appreciate that. They see that it's the review. It goes along with our interpretation of the standards-based reporting, the report cards, and the new way we had changed from going from A's and B's to meeting standard and exceeding standard and approaching standard. And homework has just so many variables attached to it that we saw that it just isn't necessary to grade. It should be, as Brendan said, a practice and an opportunity for them to gain the extra repetitions they need. And it's a lot less stressful to grade homework every single night, but to more look and see where they're still making some mistakes so that we can intervene if needed.
Okay. Turning to sort of a little less nuts and bolts thing, I know that a lot of the story concentrated on some of your instructional strategies and mentioned but didn't go into depth about what you've done to improve the culture at the school. Michael, would you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah. You know, the most successful teachers that we have here are the ones that take the time to build the right kind of relationship with their kids. And along that relationship building, we do a lot of culture establishment as well, organizing, you know, what are the codes that we learn by, what are the things that we expect of you, and that culture has been very focused on education from the time I got here 3 years ago. We've highlighted the strengths of the cultures that we see at the school, the different groups that we serve here, and you know, I know Brendan and I had a huge connection with the Sounders the first time we kind of hung out, and that kind of grew into us having a soccer league at recess, and now we have this great Soccer for Success program at our school after the school day, and I mean, we foster the relationships of our kids and our families as best we can through establishing a positive culture at our school.
So do you participate in the after-school soccer program?
I did until last semester when I got engaged. So I have to go home now and not play.
Do other teachers participate?
Yeah, our PE teacher is actually the head coach. They just did a national show on the program, and they videoed our coaches and the director here. So, I mean, that's just one element. We also just had a Dia de los Niños festival last night that had over 700 people here, snow cones, piñatas. It's just we don't want to shy away from that kind of stuff. We want to engage our kids and keep them in the positive environment that we've built.
Yeah. Brendan, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Michael addressed that question really well. Okay.
So a couple questions on part of the instructional method. There was an education historian that was quoted in the story and also has submitted an op-ed who said, you know, instructional methods that draw from direct instruction, you know, can achieve a lot, but he wouldn't want his daughter in that kind of classroom. I don't know if you guys saw that. You know, I just wondered what your response was to that kind of feeling about direct instruction.
I'll start. You know, I think direct instruction can be done badly, and it can be done really well. And I think what we're an example of is that it can be done well, if you want to call us a direct instruction school. But I really do think that we're kind of a balance of you know, reform mathematics and direct instruction. That's why we call it balanced math. You know, kids can get unhappy in a pure direct instruction environment, but our kids aren't. And I think that video that's posted with the article exemplifies that. The things that Michael just described, as far as the methods that we use to build community and engage kids, really help to foster a culture that is focused on academics, learning, and feeling safe and secure at school. So I think that you know, if it were, you know, the Wonder Years teacher getting up in front of the room and opening his book and giving an hour-long lecture every day, I think if it was that kind of culture there at Gildo, that yeah, we would have some sad kids and some disappointed parents and some people who wouldn't want their kids at our school. But that is the polar opposite of what it's like. It's a fun, exciting place to be, and probably the most exciting things that kids witness at Gildo is their growth and learning. And once you hook a kid into that learning environment and understanding that they can succeed and they can move forward, they're really unstoppable. And so I would put my kids in a Gildo Rey because I want my kids to feel empowered as well, like the kids are at our school. It's an empowering environment. It's not a degrading environment, and that's what makes the difference. 20% of what we do is the content and the instructional side, and 80% of our success is probably correlated to how we interact with kids and the culture that we have and the environment that we built at Gildo. So that's a huge, huge piece, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Michael, do you want to add to that as well?
I'd just add to, I think you and I, Linda, had talked about the Washington, that man that just won the award in Tacoma.
Nate Bowling. I think it's Nate Bowling.
Yeah. He summarized it perfectly as it's a third performance art, it's a third sales, and then that last third is the actual teaching, as Brendan was saying. So it goes back to that relationship piece that's just so important.
So, Michael, why don't you talk a little bit more about, Brendan, you talked about direct instruction can be done badly and it can be done well, and you talked a little bit about how it can be done well. What about a little more specifics on that? How do you know you teach it well, and what do you do to teach it well? We'll start with Michael for that one. Yeah.
Michael,
I look at the engagement level of my classroom to see how I'm actually interacting with the kids. I think a good teacher can manage 31 like we do here sometimes, and still understand where each kid is. Have that formative assessment on each whiteboard after they answer the question, and be able to intervene as necessary. You have to have a fast wit about you when you're doing that kind of teaching. So I don't really know a prime example of what a great direct instruction teacher looks like, because like Brendan said, I look at myself more as a balance of direct with some constructivist elements into what I'm doing, and trying to instigate my kids on different levels of engagement and learning and understanding.
And I know the problem solving that in math in particular is one example of that, right? Of the balance to the math program.
Mm-hmm.
Because you spend the students in the small group problem solving is a big part of that, correct?
Yeah, it's their opportunity to apply the skill and the concept of each standard that we go through, and really push themselves to be creative in their pictures, in their equations, and how they attack the problem. And it provides us great opportunities for us to teach, good stress management, good behavior management. I think a lot of the time we think of teaching as just teaching one subject area, but I integrate a lot of character education as I'm doing my math. I know that's something I learned from Brendan is I would walk in there and I'd see him going on a tangent about college and life, and I wanted to implement that as well, and saw the benefit of it. So yeah, it is the problem solving is a huge element that a lot of kids struggle with, but with our background in conceptual understanding and their skill practice, they're better equipped than most.
So unfortunately, we're running out of time. These things tend to go pretty fast, but I was wondering, you guys have both stressed when I've talked with both of you about, part of Gildo Rey's success is looking carefully at the students that you have and what they need, and making sure they get that. But so given that, you've looked for what worked at your school, but given that, what lessons do you think other schools can take from what you've done? Brendan, do you want to start with that?
I think the most important lesson is that we all need to know and understand that teaching our standards is a critical piece of success, and understanding those standards is important as well. But I think the most important piece to understand, and that it is exemplified not just by our scores, but the attitude and feeling at our school, is that all kids can. And everybody at Gildo believes that all kids can. And there's no kid that walks into my classroom or Michael's classroom that we turn around and say, gosh, I don't think this kid's going to make it, or I think this kid can't get over the line. It's about looking at that kid, understanding who they are as a person, what their background is, where their weaknesses are, and where their strengths are, and then identifying an accurate plan for moving them forward from that point. And that's what it's all about. All kids can. We gotta. There's that flipping from Capturing Kids' Hearts quotes. You know, once you engage their heart, you can engage their mind. Mm-hmm. And I think we all really believe that. And you know, if there's anything I want most schools to take away from this, is that the belief and the true understanding that regardless of background, all kids can achieve and make a difference in the world, if we teach them to believe in themselves and we teach them to recognize their successes. So that'd be the thing I'd want people to walk away with.
What about you, Michael?
I wouldn't say it any differently, honestly. I think, like you said, the relationship, the belief that we have in our kids is unparalleled. So.
That's it? They just have to believe in their kids? No other tips beyond that? I mean, most schools, let me push back on that a little bit, because I think, you know, most schools would say that, right? That they believe in their kids, they believe in each kid can learn, and I believe most teachers are working very hard every day to achieve that, but they can't always. So what is it beyond that then? There's got to be something, you know, other lessons there or other advice you'd have to teachers or parents who may be watching.
Go ahead, Brendan. He's gathering now.
I mean, you know, it sounds too easy almost, you know.
It's not easy, though. Mm-hmm. It's the most challenging part of teaching. You have to be able to, and it's the number one thing, you have to be able to engage kids. And you have to be able to recognize where they're at and move them forward. So it's huge. It's like Michael said, you know, I don't remember what he said, 1/3 performance, something like that. It's such a big part of our job, being able to engage kids. You have to be able to engage them.
And it's not just one person. It's a combined effort from every single element that they're exposed to throughout the day. And that I think is where we push the line, is that it's not just one teacher making a difference. It's 74 individuals all coming towards one goal.
Absolutely. At no point in the day of one of our kids are they going to go to somebody that believes that they can't. Everybody at our school believed that they can, and had the knowledge and background and understanding of standards and what kids need to know and be able to do at each of their grade levels to move them forward, and move them forward with the belief that they can. So it's just a key element, that positive culture and belief that students can move forward from the school leadership all the way down to, you know, the recess personnel. So it's a culture thing.
Well, I'm sorry to say that we've run out of time. Thanks to everyone. Thanks very much to Brendan Jeffries and Michael Fitzgerald. Thanks very much for joining this Google Hangout, and thanks to everyone who's watching.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Linda.
Okay.